Welcome to the Wellness and Wahala podcast. So, you all, I have a very special, honorable VIP member and guest today. He is a frontline hero, a neurologist and emergency medicine doctor, Dr. Benedict Idowu, and he is a medical professional in the specialty of neurology. So, for those of you that don't know what neurology is, it's the area of medicine that deals with the diagnosis and treatment of disease of the brain and the nervous system. He's a successfully trained, American trained medical doctor, of course, also Nigerian. I'm Dr. Benedict Ikundayo Idowu. Over to you, sir. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, Dr. Tommy. Certainly, I appreciate you getting me on your program. I'm doing very well.
Thank you. So tell us more about yourself. You know, you have a very long bio, but I always tell people it's better to hear it first, from the person that has the experience. So I want you to tell us more about your experience. You have over 4 decades, 40 years in the field of medicine and neurology. So can you talk more about that, your background? I know you're a family man, a father, and also a grandfather. So over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I don't know how much time we have. I can give you the short version, or I can give you the long version. Which one do you want? Or I can give you the medium version.
anyone. I
Okay.
know that your experience is too plenty for us to even have on this show. It's plenty, but at
Oh,
least give us a great snapshot, sir.
that is too kind of you. Anyway, my journey actually began way back in the 60s. I was born in 1958.
Nice.
1958. In a town called Jos in the northern part of Nigeria.
Yes, Plateau State.
Plateau State, exactly. And my growing up was in Pangshin. Pangshin is about 70 to 75 to 78 miles away from Jos. So most of my growing up was in that small town of Pangshin, and it is truly Pangshin and some other factors in life that made me the person that I am today. In terms of growing up, I went to elementary school in Pangshin and left Pangshin. Went to secondary school first in Agenabode and then in Benin City. And after that, I left and came to the United States.
Nice. Oh my goodness. That's a lot.
Yeah. So in terms of my background, I trained in the medical specialty of neurology. I'm an osteopathic physician by training, as opposed to allopathic. The osteopath is a physician with the initial DO, Doctor of Osteopathy, and then the allopath is the MD. Both trainings are identical. However, the DO has the additional training that emphasizes the relationship between anatomy and function. The philosophy in osteopathic medicine is that when you mess up with the anatomy, you're also going to mess up with the function. So that's something we can go into in detail later. But anyway, so I was trained in both allopathic medical training and in osteopathic medical training.
Okay, so that is great. You're a great subject matter expert on this issue, and I know that this is something that really affects the African community and also the African American community. When you're thinking about things like epilepsy, stroke, headaches, neuropathy, migraines, it affects our community a lot. So I'm really happy, that we have experts like you on the front line really tackling this issue. So my first question, Sai, is can you tell us about your journey to becoming a neurologist, a doctor? You just said that you grew up in a small village in Jos Plateau State. I'm a former U.S. government diplomat. I worked with the CDC. I did a lot of site visits, and I love Plateau States because of the nice weather. I've
Yes,
enjoyed.
yes, indeed. I'm a little prejudiced with that. Yeah, I'm an Nigerian by all means, but if you ask me where should where should you go to live in Nigeria, I'll tell you Jos.
Yes, yes.
Even though I'm an Abeokuta man, uh, my father is from the southern part of Nigeria, from the western part, from the town called Abeokuta. My mother is from the Middle East. She's from a town called Agenabode.
Okay.
But anyway, it all started back in the 60s when I was attending elementary school in Pangshin. Back then, I would accompany my mother to the hospital. She was a nurse practitioner back then, and I would watch her interact with her patients. And I was really, it gave a great impression upon me the way how appreciative her patients were, how happy they were to see her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where my foundation started. I made it a point to find out exactly what it is that she's doing for these people that's making them so happy.
Yes.
But anyway, so when I decided I was going to go into medicine, I was influenced by events that happened around that time when I was growing up. I had a friend who had seizure disorder. Back then, we didn't know what seizure disorder was. At least I did not know what it was. We were growing up, we were under the impression that seizures are kind of spiritual assault on human beings. Something that comes from evil spirits.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that back then, when someone had a seizure, people would run to the side and sprinkle ashes on the ground in that area, in the belief that if you step on that area before the ashes were sprinkled, you are going to come down with seizures. But anyway, I talked to my mom about it, and she told me that was not the case.
Yeah.
And she kind of then I asked her, so can this be treated? She told me then that she looked at me and said, well, there's no treatment, but maybe you can find a treatment. So my curiosity kind of started back then. So I left elementary school. I wasn't doing well in elementary school, and she was concerned about that. And so she talked to one of my uncles who sent for me. He was then a headmaster in Agenabode. Came down to Agenabode, and he put me under his tutorial. I had an aunt also who was a school teacher in Agenabode. She too contributed in my tutorial back then. And I was transferred from that elementary school when I was ready to go into secondary school. And my first secondary school was at St. Peter's Grammar School, where I went and spent 1 year. And another aunt decided I should be in ICC, Immaculate Conception College in Benin City, which was a much bigger school, much advanced school, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I wound up going to some ICC and stayed with my Uncle Jerome, and I stayed with him briefly until my aunt, Auntie Celestina, was able to find a place for me at her own residence. She was then living in within the premises of a secondary school where she was the principal. So I stayed with her throughout the time that I was in Benin City for my secondary school education. And at the end of that, I left for the United States in 1978, December of 1978.
Nice.
For a school for my university training at Dillard University initially, and then LSU. After I did pre-med at Dillard, after completing pre-med at Dillard, I could not get into med school. So instead of hanging around doing nothing, I decided to get into a program that is today called respiratory therapy. So so I went to LSU in New Orleans for that training. I finished and became a respiratory therapist, but I still had the burning sensation, the burning desire to become a physician, because when I left Nigeria to come to the United States, I came to become a physician. And each time I would tell my wife that I'm not happy with what I was doing, which is being a respiratory therapist, she would tell me, but it's paying the bills. I said, no, it's not about the bills. It's not about the bills. It's about what I want to do.
Your passion, yes.
Absolutely. So I wound up working as a respiratory therapist while still trying to get into school. Back then, I did not know anything about a DO school. So I wound up being admitted to an MD school in the Caribbean.
Okay.
Yeah, so I spent a semester in the Caribbean. But while I was
which
there,
Caribbean country? Which Caribbean island?
St. Lucia.
Okay.
St. Lucia. I was briefly at St. Lucia and then transferred from St. Lucia to Grenada.
Okay.
And then while I was at Grenada, I got admitted into a DO school here in the U.S. So I came back to the U.S. and attended the DO school in Kansas City, Missouri. Upon graduation, I moved back to the southern part of the United States, where I had gone to university.
Okay.
And that time was New Orleans. So I came back to New Orleans and did my residency at Tulane. Upon completing my residency, I started a practice back in 1997, and in private practice ever since.
That is excellent journey. One of the things I wanted to highlight is just the power of the village. So you said, you started your journey in Plateau State, but then you had relatives, aunties and uncles. My mom is actually have been in Yoruba, so it's similar journeys. And then, you had your aunts and uncles that were able to support you. You went to Benin. Then when you came to the U.S., you weren't distracted. You started, you couldn't get in on time. You did respiratory program. My mom's actually a retired respiratory therapist.
Wow.
So and of course that's not what she set out to study when she first came here. So I always tell people, in this journey of life, we face a lot of wahalas and detours, but you have to stay focused, and you knew your destiny, you knew your passion, and it took you from Nigeria to the US, to the Caribbean, about 2 islands, back to the US, and you still came out as a top neurologist and emergency medicine doctor. So I don't want to let that message go, and that's one of the names of and why I get, honorable subject matter experts and VIP guests like you, because on your pathway to wellness and in your career, you faced a lot of wahala in life. That's for sure. On any journey that you get, especially, you have a dream, you have a destiny. And I always tell people, nobody, if God gives you a dream, nobody sees that dream, but you. So you have to continue to ignite it, and make sure that you implement it and you bring it, into fruition. You understand that? So that journey is really a spectacular journey, because it's really, really not easy, especially a Yoruba man growing up in the north. If many of my listeners, the northern part of Nigeria is mostly, Hausa, Fulani is a different tribe, different languages. You probably speak multiple languages.
And I certainly do. As a matter of fact, I speak Hausa more fluently than I speak my own Yoruba language.
You see?
I can sing in 4 different Nigerian languages.
Wow. See, Sanu. Nagode. I know a little. Nagode. Thank you.
Let me sing you a song in Hausa. Okay. Dagani da idona mazan bazan arme kashin baya ba dagani da idona bazan arme gashin baya ba. How about that?
Oh my goodness, that is wonderful. Please translate for those that don't know Hausa.
Okay, okay. What that song is saying is that um, the Gani that do not. In other words, as long as I'm awake and alert, I will not marry someone who is very hairy. So this is a young woman singing about the kind of person that she wants to marry.
Nice.
She's not going to marry someone who is hairy all over, like like a gorilla. The gani da idona bazan arme gash ba ya ba. The gani da idona bazan arme gash ba ya ba.
See, so that is wonderful, and I think that of course, you being in the Caribbean, you will hear they have their own, broken English patois. So my last diplomatic post, I was posted to Jamaica for a year, and I know that they had a lot of Nigerian medical students there. So it's not just, I'm sure Nigerian pidgin too, because you stayed in Edo states.
Absolutely.
So those I think are the benefits of your very, I would say complicated journey, but a very, I think rewarding journey, because I believe nothing in life, comes easy, that is good. Usually when you take the easy path, it usually ends in destruction. So so
That
it's
is
better.
true.
Yeah,
That is true.
it's better to to stay focused, and your journey, I think, is very admirable and empowering. But we're in the midst of this COVID-19 Wahala pandemic, and a lot of people have lost their jobs. Unemployment rate continues to rise in Nigeria, and here now we have a new variant. We still haven't even tackled the surge of the Delta variant. So a lot of people, in our culture, we say a lot of people, they suffer and smile.
Yeah.
They're really suffering. Yeah, they're really suffering and smiling. But what type of tips can you give those that are going through similar, wahala and journeys? They have a vision, they have a dream, but they haven't reached it yet. And they're going through a lot of wahala challenges. One of the challenges, when I read your background, was a time when you visited Nigeria. They refused you for a visa to return back to the U.S. at the embassy, and you went through a lot of wahala. So, what are your tips on trying to tell people to stay focused? What are the things that helped you? Did you have a village of supporters? What tools? What tips can you give those that are facing a lot of wahala in this season? Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tommy. That is a very, very good question. And I guess I want to start by saying that there are three very important factors, that come into play for anyone to succeed under any condition. The first one is faith. You have to have faith. You have to have faith. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in a God that's out there looking out for you all the time. The second one is hard work and determination. You have to be hardworking. Nothing is easy. Nothing good comes easy. Nothing good comes easy. If you take the shortcut, just like you mentioned earlier, if you take the shortcut, it's not going to take you anywhere. Anything that takes time to make, it's usually better than something that doesn't take time to make. The third factor is personal integrity. I believe that, when you have personal integrity, you're going to have honesty. And when you have honesty, you're going to have humility.
Yes.
When you have humility, you're going to have focus, So that focus allows you to be focused on your objective. You have to have an objective or goals,
Yes.
I remember when I told my parents that I was married. Remember, my parents sent me here to go to school to become a physician. And I was in college. I was at Dillard University in New Orleans when I decided, without telling them, to get married.
Hey!
Yeah. So you can imagine how
you
they
told
felt.
Nigerian parents.
Yeah. So when I told them I was married, at that time I was still a sophomore, either sophomore or freshman. I was a sophomore in college. So my father said, "There goes the physician. There goes the doctor."
Oh no.
His concern was, how can you be married and become a physician?
Yes.
It doesn't happen. Uh, then my wife, my mother, who was always on my side, told him, "Baba, don't worry. The boy is focused."
Mm-hmm.
So I proved to them that I was really focused.
That is good, and at least mama, you were probably the mama's boy, so of course
Right.
mommy will always stick up, most of the time for her son, so
Absolutely.
it's good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's very good. I wanted to also ask, how does it feel to live in the US compared to, living in Nigeria, living in the Caribbean? You've been to different regions. What do you admire the most here? And what are some of the things that you dislike or you miss from living back at home or in the Caribbean islands? Because it's a very different environment. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Well, for one thing, what I really like about the U.S. system, living here in the U.S., is the honor system. The civility. You know, the civility, the honor system, the fact that people do what they're supposed to do without being prompted to do it. For example, you go to the bank, people just naturally queue up. When I visited Nigeria with my kids, the first thing my kids were telling me, how come everyone's blowing their horn? What is going on?
Mm-hmm.
All the cars were blowing their horns at the same time. And went to the bank. Uh, People were rushing to get to the teller. There was no sense of organization, no sense of, there was no discipline whatsoever.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So that's what I like about the US. The civility, the honor system. People do what they're supposed to do when they should do it. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens most of the time.
Yes.
Mm. Uh, in terms of what I don't like, I'm in the medical field, and the one thing I hate the most is people uh, give me the sense of entitlement.
Mm.
You know, you come to me suffering, and yet you want to dictate to me how I help you. You know.
Yes.
Anyway.
I think that's a good point. But then, another thing that I also noticed, and I was talking to somebody about health disparities, in the medical system, and how a lot of us minorities or first generation Americans, migrants, they really have a tough time navigating the medical system, and there's just been a lot of discrimination and disparity gaps, when compared to other populations, for example, so African immigrants. But one of the things that my mom, and my dad really empowered us to do is to support, just like you said, it takes a village of supporters. But all of our family physicians, including even up to now that I have a pediatrician, whenever I go to a hospital, even if it's the ER, I always ask, do you have a Nigerian doctor? Nigeria is the most populated country, and black nation in the world with over 200 million people. We're everywhere, so
That
there's
is
nowhere that you can go to, no states, no island, no village. If a Nigeria is not there, there's a problem. You understand?
exactly. That is true. That is so true. That is so true.
That's what I tell people. So I ask, I'm like, okay, if I have to see, like, an orthopedic specialist, a gynecologist, or anything, I first ask, is there any Nigerian doctor, in your facility, or any African American physician, because you actually go the extra mile. You pay attention to details. For example, if I'm traveling back home to Nigeria and I need anti-malaria, drugs, I tell a typical American doctor, they will have no clue. They'll be like, what? Why do you need? There's no malaria here. You understand? I have to explain myself. They don't have that cultural competency. You understand? They don't have that global world view. So I actually prefer physicians, because when you have practice, and you've seen how it is practicing medicine in developing country compared to here, Sa. So I wanted you to talk about those comparisons and the challenges. You could be in a surgery in a theater and back at home, and they take lights. NEPA takes lights, and you have to use lantern. Do you understand? In the midst of a surgery, versus here, most physicians they don't go through a lot of that hardship, and they have technology, and they can bring up stuff on the computer if they don't know stuff. No, but you're actually forced to actually go the extra mile, and that's why a lot of miracle surgeries, happen. And of course, you said, you said that your faith is one of the things that has held you in this journey.
Right.
But I just wanted you to speak on those comparisons, because I think that that's one of the things that you also bring to the table, because you have seen, and lived and worked and carried this path across 3 different regions. And those regions, it is not easy. They have limited resources, and you still were able to push through, even through starting with respiratory therapy. That is not easy, carrying oxygen machines and doing blood gas and all of that. Like that, lung specialists, people understand the importance of respiratory in this pandemic, because this is a respiratory virus, COVID-19. But you really, have went through a serious journey. And just like you said, neurology, the traditional myths of back at home, you see somebody with a seizure, they think that is something evil, because that's the traditional and cultural thing, instead of looking at it from a medical perspective. And then, it's a stereotype, and they start stereotyping people that are vulnerable and have those issues. So, I have family members that will hide, and friends that will hide their relatives that have seizure, because they don't want to, be embarrassed when, this is a medical issue. So I don't really think that that's fair. So I wanted you to talk more about that, so a lot of the listeners understand that, being a physician, in Nigeria is very different here. But I believe because that makes you stronger and even more overqualified than your counterparts, more people should, request for people like you to actually get that service. So if I needed a specialist, a neurologist specialist, I'm going to look up the top Nigerian specialists in the U.S. first. And if I don't see, then I'll go to the next, So
Right.
over to you, sir.
Okay. Well, it is true that, believe me, in my own personal experience, in hospital settings, patients will tell you that they prefer a foreign physician than their own American physicians. And I believe the reason is because we have the compassion. We have been through pain and suffering, so we can easily identify with pain and suffering than our American counterparts, especially those who did not have the life experience of going through a lot of hardship before getting into medicine. I have patients who would look for me, or who would ask for me by name, especially like during my residency program when I was a resident. They want to know where I was, how I was doing, and things like that. In terms of the differences, having been to places like the Caribbean, having been born in Nigeria, having been in this country, I can appreciate the blessings that we have here in this country in terms of medicine. And I don't take that for granted. And it makes me want to find a way to get my own people to also enjoy the same type of benefit that my patients here are enjoying. In terms of appreciation, I found, based on my childhood experience, that Nigerian patients were much more appreciative than some of the patients, just a few of the patients that I see here. And maybe it's because of the cultural environment where some people have a sense of entitlement, where at home you're glad to have a physician see you.
I think that is a very great point, sir. And also I wanted to, get more on that point, for our global listeners. Like in the US, I think that we're very blessed. And I can say at times the people are very entitled and spoiled. We have a social welfare system that even if you can't afford health care, you can get, Medicare and Medicaid. You understand that? But back at home, that is cash and carry. You understand? I've seen it where people come to the hospital and because they don't have cash, they even deliver a baby. They'll tell the lady, you can go, but we're not going to give you the baby until you can come back and pay the balance of your bill. So there's not a welfare system. So when they do see, medical doctors that come, on missions and they give assistance, they really show appreciation because, sometimes when you're too blessed, it's like when you have children and you overspoil them, they're not going to appreciate your hard work. You still have to, even if we work hard for our journey. You've been through a lot of wahala on your pathway to success and as a hero. So that does not mean that you're going to spoil your children or your grandchildren. No, you're still going to teach them the ethics of hard work, of faith, of integrity, and all of those characteristics and tools that you needed to get to where you're at. So I think that is a very good point, an excellent point that you brought up, that in everything, we should be very thankful. America, is a country of migrants and it's a land of opportunity. But a lot of times I think the typical American takes advantage, especially if they're not exposed, they don't have a passport and they've never been to another country. Some of them have not even traveled outside their states or travel outside of their region, the East Coast to the West Coast to down South. So, I tell people traveling is also part of learning, meeting new people from different cultures. You learn a lot. So, I thank you for your wealth of experience. I know, that's why I said you're one of my heroes. I looked at your background, your journey from Jaws, to the US, to the Caribbean and back. That is not easy. You speak multiple languages and you're even more, native in Hausa than in your own, Yoruba language, which is just excellent. That's one of the benefits of that. And, I was going to ask you, what are your favorite artists and music? You already blessed us, singing, but, on this journey, music is very soothing when you're going through a lot of wahala. So I wanted to find out some fun facts about you, about, what are your favorite music? What is your favorite food? And do you have like a favorite place to travel? I'm sure you've been to many nations, but, what would be your top favorite place to go and relax after, you take leave from a very busy lifestyle? Over to you, sir.
Well, you wouldn't believe it, but my favorite place to visit is my home in Richmond, Texas. That's my favorite place to visit. That is my favorite place. But uh, we have not been traveling lately for many reasons. For example, the last time we went on a real vacation was maybe, when I say real vacation where you actually go outside of the country was back in 2005. And then after that, the other time was about a few months ago when I went to visit my daughter in Houston, in Ohio, and then visited my son in Florida.
Okay.
But in terms of music, I like reggae music. I like classical music. Bob Marley is my hero. I've met him once, and I like Jimmy Cliff. I like country music a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with someone called Andy Kim. Andy Kim is a country singer.
Yes, I like country music too.
In terms of food, I like my beans fufu much more than anything else. Now that I know what it does for me,
African man, beans and fufu. That's which type of fufu? Bande yam, Abi?
Actually, my pounded yam is made from beans flour. It's not made from yam.
Okay.
Because it has the beans flour has less of carbohydrate. I tend to shy away from the carbohydrate. I stay more with the protein.
Okay.
Yeah. I like the vegetable protein. So I find that beans fufu does a lot for me.
Okay. Nice. So I wanted to ask you, do you have any last words for our audience that are listening. And, just like I said, a lot of Wahala you've experienced on, your pathway to success, and it really shaped you. So what, are some of your last words and advice to give our audience, or any favorite quotes, or African proverb that you want to share? Over to you, Sal.
Okay, well, this is my own take on life, and it is that once you compromise your personal integrity, it is like trying to push your toothpaste back into the tube. You cannot undo it. Maintain your personal integrity as a human being and as a professional, and you will always be all right.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. That is excellent. So, thank you, Sal, for being my honorable guest on the Wellness and Wahala podcast. If people wanted to get in contact with you, Sal, do you have any website? I know you're on LinkedIn. Can you provide your information? I'll also drop, the information in the bio of this podcast. But how can people reach you if they wanted to hear more about you, and get in touch with you? Over to you, Sal.
Sure. The internet has made our world one giant village. So
Mm-hmm.
we are on the internet. We are on the internet, and our website is Neurology Clinic with Dr. Idowu, um, and .com, and that is NEUROLOGYCLINICWITH with Dr. DRIDOWU.com. So
Okay.
Neurology Clinic with Dr. BenEdo.com. Our telephone number is 225-756-2180. And our email address is neurologiclinic305@gmail.com.
Thank you, Sal. You are awesome, and I know that many people will be getting in touch with you. God bless you for your great service, and to saving lives, especially in the midst of this Wahala pandemic. I wanted to leave everybody with two African proverbs, of course, from Nigeria, because that's where you come from, the giants of Africa. And the first proverb says, even among ants, there are giants, because you are one of our giant heroes, from Nigeria, hailing from West Africa, and, starting off in Jos. So God bless you. Ants, are very smart, and, they might be small, but they're extremely mighty and strategic. And I think that your journey has been extremely empowering, and you took a lot of strategic moves to get you to that pathway of success to become a neurologist and a ER medicine doctor. So thank you so much. The second proverb says, the water that you would drink from the river will not pass you. Once again, the water that you would drink from the river would not pass you. So, the water, whatever is for you, is for you. That's the meaning of that proverb. The God-given destiny that God set for you, the dream, is specifically to you. When you were born into this world, I love medicine, but God is the best scientist and doctor. Nobody comes with your fingerprint. You came with your own unique fingerprint. You came with your own unique destiny. God created you for such a special time as this. There's no other Dr. Benedict Idowu. Even if you have an identical twin, you guys are still very different. so
That is true.
so I just wanted to salute you, Sa, because you are one of our empowering VIP frontline heroes. And I wanted to thank you once again for being on the Wellness and Wahala podcast and sharing your important journey from, Nigeria to America, to the Caribbean region, and back to the US. Like, that is just, amazing. So thank you so much for all that you do. You make a lot of sacrifices, I know, both professionally and personally, as you are a father and you are a grandfather. So it takes a lot to work in this field, and also, give back and spend time with your family. So kudos to you, and also kudos to your wife, because I always tell people, behind, a hero king like you, there's always a queen, that's standing there and motivating you. So kudos to your wife and to your family and to your aunties and uncles that helped you, at the beginning of your education. As you said, it takes a village. So thank you so much, Sa.
You are most welcome. The pleasure is truly mine. Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Benedict.
Thank you, Sa. And I
Thank you.
wish you a blessed holiday season.
Same to you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Here's a song dedicated to Dr. Idowu, our frontline hero. It's called Good Job by Alicia Keys, and this is the remix by One Voice Children Choir, especially during this COVID-19 Wahala pandemic. Kudos to you, Sa, and this song is for you.
You're the engine that makes all things go, and you're always in disguise, my hero. I see your light in the dark, smile on my face when we all know it's hard. There's no way to ever pay you back. Bless your heart, know I love you for that. Honest and selfless, I don't know if this helps it, but good job, you're doing a good job, a good job. You're doing a good job, don't get too down. The world needs you now. Know that you matter, 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 yeah. You're doing a good job, a good job. You're doing a good job, don't get too down. The world needs you now. Know that you matter, 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 yeah.
6 in the morning, as soon as you walk through that door, everyone needs you again. The world's out of order, it's not a sound when you're not around.
All day on your feet, hard to keep that energy. I know when it feels like the end of the road, you don't let go, you just press forward. You're the engine that makes all things go, go. Always in disguise, my hero. I see a light in the dark, smile in my face when we all know it's hard. There's no way to ever pay you back. Bless your heart, oh I love you for that. Honest and selfless, I don't know if this helps it, but
Good job, you're doing a good job, a good job.
good job.
You're doing a good job, don't get too down. The world needs you now. Know that you matter, matter, matter.
Good job. You're doing a good job, a good job. You're doing a good job, don't get too down. The world needs you now. Know that you matter, matter, matter. Yeah. The mothers, the fathers, the teachers that reach us, strangers to friends that show up in the end. From the bottom to the top, the listeners that hear us, this is for you. You make me feel high. You're doing a good job, a good job. You're doing a good job, don't get too down. The world needs you now. Know that you matter, matter.
Thank you so much to our first responders, our healthcare workers, our mothers.
Thank you to our moms and our dads. Thank you to our teachers who've helped us.
We know it's been hard, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.